being in a tech ecosystem, we don't have a lot of women. For me to be here is proof that women can do it, women can be leaders, and I hope to inspire other women, especially young African women, to be bold and courageous, follow their passions, and when they're offered that seat at the table, to take it and take the front seat at changing the African narrative.
Since I joined Impact Africa Network, my thinking has really been expanded. I now for sure believe that if I put my mind and time into something, I can bring life-changing ideas into fruition.
The culture at IAN encourages continual learning. This makes someone to source for outlets for learning, opportunities for growth in order to continually ensure that they do the best at their job. Also working with Mark, who has this great vision for changing the African narrative. He wants to take us on that journey with him, pushes you to the limit, pushes you to want to be better.
My thinking has changed from looking for problems to being a solution provider. That way, I will stop worrying and actually do something.
I really enjoy being a leader and at the same time being a student. At Impact Africa Network, there's a lot of continuous learning and development. So it gives you this hunger for knowledge. It pushes you to be the best possible version of yourself, because you cannot change the African narrative being anything less.
At Impact Africa Network, we bet on the women. We believe women are much more effective at leading and nurturing complex people-centric systems, and startups are the quintessential people-centric systems of our day.
As the women of Impact Africa Network, we will be hosting a livecast series with global female leaders and change makers, having conversations with the intent of inspiring a new generation of female leaders just like ourselves. If you or someone you know should be part of this conversation, we would love to host you. Talk to us.
You can also be a change maker by helping us create more leadership opportunities for women by donating today. IAN is a registered U.S. non-profit charitable entity under Section 501c3.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Damaris Kongin. I'm the Public Relations and Communications Lead at Impact Africa Network. And you're joining us for for episode 6 of season 2, Power to Our Women Conversations, which is a livecast series conversations where we strive to inspire women, the next generation of female leaders in Africa. And it's sponsored by Impact Africa Network, a nonprofit startup studio on a mission to ensure young, talented Africans have a chance at participating in the digital transformation of Africa as creators and owners. How do we do this? It's through providing 12-month innovation fellowships to talented college graduates. And so far, we've had 60 college graduates going through the Innovation Fellowship program, very exciting. And now, while at it, we are also on a mission to make sure that we also have female leaders taking up space. And one of the ways in which we saw that we could make for that to happen is through having these conversations, which are very, very vital. So 2 seasons in, episode 6, we still bring more exciting guests to you. We hope we keep to inspire you. We hope that you give us more feedback on how we can improve the show and how we can bring the right stories that can inspire you and also make you able to take up space in your own special way. So today we are joined by a very special guest who will be introduced in the next few minutes. Feel free to also interact with us on our social media channels. And yeah, we are looking forward to a very exciting show. I'm going to introduce my co-host, a very special person, part of the Innovation Fellowship program at Impact Africa Network. Her name is Grace Kitao. I'll let her say hi and also introduce herself.
Hello. Thank you so much, Damaris, for that introduction. As Damaris has said, my name is Grace Kitao. I am also a fellow at Impact Africa Network. I head the financial literacy program at KUZA, which is one of the projects that stem from Impact Africa Network. We aim to be the financial well-being partner for the new generation. I am super, super excited to be introducing the amazing speaker that we have today on today's show. Her name is Rosita Najmi. Rosita has been a global social and economic development specialist since 2001. At PayPal, she leads the global social innovation team, which engages people, customers, employees, products, and business operations to advance social, economic, and environmental impact. Before she came to PayPal, she worked at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where she led a range of fintech-related investments and bodies of work, including women's financial inclusion. Though she's done so much with her life, she actually began her career here in Africa as a social entrepreneur, as co-founder and executive director of an international NGO in Benin. Rosita earned her MBA from Harvard Business School and a BA with honors in economics, French, and politics from Wake Forest University. So Rosita, I'm so glad to have you on the show. Hi, Rosita.
Good evening. Such a pleasure to be with all of you. This morning, as I was having breakfast with my two little boys, I generally try to tell them about what my day will look like. And this morning I said, guess what? I get to meet with the future global leaders, innovators, and change makers. And they were so excited. So such a pleasure to be with you. And thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. We actually consider it a very amazing opportunity also for us to just interact with you. I mean, just listening to your bio, that's something else. You've really worked your way up your career, and even the impact that you've had while at it is quite tremendous. So we are very excited to have you here today. I think maybe we'll just allow you to briefly introduce yourself and then tell us more about your career journey, how you got to where you are today. Yeah.
Sure. So I'm a trained development economist with an MBA, as you heard. And I've been very lucky that my career has had a number of different kind of segments. The first segment, as you heard, was really being in the field as a field researcher and social entrepreneur, and spent about 4 years that. And that was really foundational and really has informed all of my experiences and my approach to the development work that I do. The second phase of my career was continuing to be on the front lines, as well as being a part of operations. And that was working with some of the leading international non-government organizations that you might have heard of, including Mercy Corps, as well as Action Center for Financial Inclusion. The third kind of segment of my career was kind of going up a level at the ecosystem level. And that's where I worked with governments on policy and system change. And that was when I was a development economist at the World Bank, and actually helped develop the global practice on financial inclusion, which included creating a template for strategies for countries like Kenya and others in East Africa around the world to develop national strategies for financial inclusion and how to measure them. And then the final kind of segment of my life, which has been kind of the past 10 years, was being a funder. And that has spanned different types of capital, including impact investing, using debt and equity, and then also using grant dollars at the Gates Foundation, and then continuing that combination of impact investing and grant dollars at PayPal.
Awesome. Sounds quite the very interesting transitions. Did you always know that's what you wanted to do, or like what inspires you to actually, keep seeking solutions for people and trying to bring impact to them?
So at the beginning, my dream and path, I always thought I would be a lawyer. And would fight for justice using the tool of the law and the rules and the regulations. I think what was always clear to me was I wanted to be on the other side of poverty. I grew up very poor. My family came to the United States with $3,000 and 3 suitcases. And so I had a very personal relationship with poverty growing up. And I knew that I wanted to transfer that personal experience and knowledge to being a part of the solution for poverty for others. So that was always clear. But the details of how I was going to do that were not always clear. And I think that's where it's good to have a little bit of flexibility. and that sometimes the world presents you opportunities of service that you had never envisioned or even knew about. And I would argue for many of you, there are going to be jobs and careers that don't even exist today that you will be doing in the future. And so while the details were not always clear, the end outcome was, which was to be a part of reducing poverty and improving the lives and livelihoods of others.
That's brilliant. I really like what you say about flexibility and being open-minded, allowing yourself to, go after it, not being sure about it, but really putting your foot forward and seeing where it will take you. So there's actually, so you're the head of social innovation at PayPal, and there's exciting things that are happening while there. One of the recent ones being PayPal committing over $100 billion to advance financial inclusion and economic empowerment for women and girls. So I'd really love you to expound more on it, but I'll allow our audience to just see a brief video of what it's about, and then we can get into it.
Sure.
Thank you.
To empower women is to empower humanity. Because when women and girls have equal opportunity, households, communities, policies, businesses, and economies thrive. Women are transforming our world, yet their full potential remains untapped in every corner of the globe. Progress is possible. Let us not only imagine a better, more prosperous future for all humanity, let us unleash it. By removing barriers for women and girls, we can secure a future for all of us. PayPal is committed to the continued empowerment of women and girls around the world. By knowing her, empowering her, connecting her, and investing in her, we can close the gaps once and for all. Join us.
Right. So, as we've just seen, women's economic empowerment is one of PayPal's key focus areas. And as the video has said, and as Kongen has informed us, your company recently made a commitment of $100 million to fulfill this societal need. Could you kindly share a high-level overview of this to help us understand how this works? Yeah.
Absolutely. So just a little bit of context. This was part of a global effort that the United Nations was leading in terms of mobilizing commitments from all stakeholders, government, civil society, the international development community, the private sector, in terms of what can we do both to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the first women's conference that was hosted actually by the government of Mexico. And how do we mobilize energy to get faster towards one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is Sustainable Development Goal number 5 on gender equality. And what we did as a company was thought about what can we do that really goes across the full suite of resources that we have, and to really think about going beyond our financial capital, and how can we leverage our human capital, our reputation capital, our network capital, and our intellectual capital. So that's how we designed the overall commitment. And as you saw in the video, there's a number of categories where we thought about how can we use our resources in a sustainable way that can help us better know women, better connect women to the market, empower women, and then invest in her. And so you'll see across the different details of our commitment fitting into those categories. So in terms of knowing women, we have committed to supporting the disaggregation of data by gender. And I know that Kenya and many other countries have actually already realized the power and potential of this in terms of disaggregating data, and particularly financial services data. In terms of connecting her, we've made a commitment to help charities, non-government organizations that are trying to advance gender equality we're going to be working on helping them raise money in a more efficient and effective way. And that's by getting them onto the PayPal giving platform, where they can get digital donations from all over the world and over 400 million PayPal consumers. And in terms of empowering her, we thought about our people, our employees who have lots of skills that can support women, and whether it's mentoring women entrepreneurs or working with women and girls and encouraging them to pursue industries like STEM. As a company, we've committed 10,000 hours of volunteering to leverage our human capital of our employees to support women and girls in their goals. And we've also looked at our own policies. How can we look at our policies around paid leave, pay equity, caregiving support, and preventing workplace sexual harassment, and making sure that the rules and policies that we have for our employees are best in class in the United States and thinking globally expanding. And then finally, we thought about investing in women and girls. And that's where we're leveraging the cash on the balance sheet of our company and making investments in funds and in organizations and supporting women owned small businesses. So that gives you kind of a sense. We really tried to think about all the different ways beyond money. So not traditional corporate philanthropy, but really harnessing the core business.
Amazing. I really love how it was very well thought out and inclusive in terms of the different aspects, and not just from the financial standpoint to empowering, especially when you said empowering women in STEM. Definitely there's been that issue where yes, there's girls who would be interested, but they're not empowered to see maybe the value that would be there, or the opportunities that actually exist for them to take up those spaces in STEM. So it totally resonates with some of the work we're trying to also do. For instance, we have a new From Here Ventures, which is also trying to fund women leading startups. Very exciting project that's just started. There's also our STEM school, Jenga, computer science school. That's also, we actually onboarded, rather appointed our first CEO. She's female. And her goal is actually to empower 50,000 women into STEM programs that we have at Jenga School. So it's very exciting to see that there are actually corporations or other organizations that are actually thinking about these things. And because there's definitely the need for it. So having that at the forefront of some of the plans that you guys have is really, really thoughtful. I think maybe I can just go to talking about, how is investing in future innovations like digital payments essential to our social development and economic progress?
Well, I'm not sure I have the answer. We should actually turn it over to all of you, because I think Kenya and other countries in East Africa have taught the world what is possible when you invest in digital payments. And I certainly learned a lot from the M-Pesa story, as well as other products that digital payments have allowed. And we all know that digital payments are not a silver bullet. They're not a solution, and they actually can cause harm as well. And that's why we need good consumer protection and lots of mechanisms in place to around fraud and other kind of negative things. But I think what's inspiring is the clear link of how digital payments can be a tool to so many problems. And there's a resource that identifies how digital payments can be a solution to 13 of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, and encourage you guys all to check that out. And then it goes goal by goal in terms of how digital payments can address issues, not just around poverty and economic empowerment, but health, good governance. And the four that I would point out is, first, around time poverty. It is expensive to be poor. And I think the poor know better than anyone else, and I would argue women particularly know better than anyone else, the costs of time poverty and how little time there is to do things. And digital payments can help save so much time and increase, that allows that time to be applied towards learning or productivity. I think another opportunity around digital payments is around the rural-urban disconnect. And that with digital payments, it's less important to be in the major city that's very populated. And so it helps overcome some of those disparities between rural and urban areas. A third opportunity I would present is the network effect. With digital payments, you can increase the velocity and volume of money and overcome some of the issues around cash flow in terms of not being able to manage your money more efficiently, in terms of it's less of a big deal in terms of the gap of time between when you need the money versus when you're going to get an income stream, whether it's a remittance or a payment from your employer. And then finally, the opportunity I would point around digital payments is the data for good opportunity. And that once you start interacting, whether you're a consumer or a merchant with digital, you create data exhaust. And that data can actually be used to help you, for example, be eligible for credit or for other types of products. And so I think this data for good opportunity is huge in terms of both helping the end user make themselves eligible for things they might not have been, but also to help the provider better understand how their consumers using these digital payments.
Amazing. You make a good point. I think, you mentioned that for us, we could have something to say about that. Yeah, for sure. M-Pesa has really revolutionized so many things. It's made business better for people in areas where they couldn't access, easy transactions, or even improving relationships between families, and even that access to people, making sure their families are taken care of back at home and all that. So it's really made things better, and I'm sure the future of it is even growing further and further. I'll have Grace just maybe give much clarification on that or add on to it before we move on.
Yeah, I completely agree with Kongen. M-Pesa really has changed how Kenyans, do business. The point that you mentioned on time poverty, I think is actually a really important point, because without innovations in digital payments, innovations in the fintech world, the amount of time people spend worrying about money, worrying about how to make it, how to transact, making long lines in banks, it really takes away from time that could have been spent, more productively, moving your career forward, connecting with family. I think that point really resonated with me. Maybe it's because I've made long lines in the bank in the past, but yeah. So obviously the world is changing, and my question is, as we look to make a meaningful and sustainable impact, how do we, differentiate between long-term sustainable growth opportunity and short-term market pivot points? Yeah.
I love this question because I'm very impatient, and people often laugh because they notice a disconnect between my personality and the career I've chosen. So when we think about global development and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, human capital, for instance, education, health, these are things that take time to improve, and these are things that take time to achieve. Education alone, when you make an investment in education, you don't actually see the results immediately, right? And then other issues like social and cultural norms, which can be huge barriers to change and impact, those also take time. And so there's a requirement for us to design for long-term plays, but there are immediate needs. People are hungry, people need resources and have needs in the immediate. And I think that's where our design and our strategies have to design for that long-term reality, that some of these changes are not quick, but then we can identify these pivots and accelerators that can allow us to have intermediate outcomes that can be solutions for the immediate needs that lives are experiencing. And I would identify 4. So first, clearly, and I have a bias, is technology, right? Technology can help. I remember the first time I was in Africa, I saw a phone booth. And when I went inside of it, realized it was actually a cell phone. that was planted and fixed in the phone booth. And I was like, this is so smart. They didn't wait around for the government to install the infrastructure of a landline. They just skipped that step and applied a economic development concept of the catch-up effect of just skipping and not doing all the traditional things you would normally do, but just using the technology. A second example is around innovative finance. And I think this is where all different types of capital, grant dollars, debt, equity, different types of funding have to come in to be a part of the capital stack that will help finance these solutions to poverty and other needs. The third is where our government leaders really need to invest in innovative policy and regulations that can both protect and design for the future, but also create incentives for short-term behavior changes that are going to be needed to kind of catalyze the economy to do what's necessary to achieve these growth opportunities. And then the last area is making sure this whole process, whether it's technology, financing, or the policy and regulatory environment, is inclusive and participatory. I think we all know how important it is to include the end user, the end beneficiary, the lives and families and communities and economies that we want to improve and thrive, including them in the design process. So making sure both upfront when we're deciding how are we even what problem we should choose and prioritize, but then also what solution we would design, making sure that the voice of those communities are in and at that table so that the process is inclusive and participatory, and in most cases will be much more successful.
That's actually a really comprehensive response. I think when the government or stakeholders are generally debating over how to take care of these needs, it's very, very important to really strike that balance, because in taking care of long-term needs and long-term growth does not necessarily mean that people should suffer or feel excluded in the short term. Yeah, Kongin, what do you think?
I think the last point is what I would even like to expound on. She's talked about inclusivity. So women being rather gender. So my mind would be about why it's so important for women to actually, or rather just having that gender inclusivity in the developments and innovations of the future. Yeah,
absolutely. So I'd like to answer this question in three parts. One is the opportunity. The second is the risk when you don't. And the third is when it comes to the numbers and results, because that's how I think. So first, on the opportunity. We know that really good products like iPhones or other, think about some of the most impressive and useful products. They're successful because of a concept of human-centered design, and that the product was created to be a solution to a problem or a need. And in some cases, the person doesn't even realize they have that problem or need, but this product helped them realize they have a problem, and this is the best solution for that product. And so the opportunity is that it's important to have the most accurate understanding of the needs and wants of people. And I wanted to share a story that really opened my mind to this, and that there's a story about a professor, an anthropology professor, who was presenting a picture of an antler bone, which had 28 small markings on it. And the professor said that this is alleged to be man's first attempt at a calendar. And so all the students look at this, bone with the markings. And then the professor asks, what man needs to know when 28 days have passed? And the professor asked, I suspect that this is woman's first attempt at a calendar. And what this helped me remember is how important it is for women, men, and just in general, different perspectives to be a part of the solution and creating these innovations and inventions. When we think about the dishwasher, diapers, coffee makers, guess who invented those? Women. When you think about the first computer and what made it work, it was a woman, Ada Lovelace, a mathematician and a scientist, who was the first computer program. When we think about who found the first computer bug, as we all fear having a computer virus, it was a woman, Grace Murray Hooper. And the inventor of Kevlar, which is a steel-like fiber that we use in tires, in crash helmets, and bulletproof vests, that was another woman, Stephanie Kwolek. The corn mill and a lot of innovations in agriculture, women. And so I think that I hope is a clear example that women have to be a part of the solution in many cases because they deeply understand, are aware of the problems, and can therefore create solutions that not only address them, but address them in an innovative way. A second, way of thinking about this question is risk. So what happens when women are not a part of this? And I think we have a strong evidence base around the world when it comes to artificial intelligence, algorithms, machine learning, and how they can be biased if women are not a part of the creation of them. And these artificial intelligence algorithms, they're making major decisions. And in some cases, whether or not someone can get access to credit, or whether or not someone makes the final round for a job, right? And so it's so important for women to be a part of that design so that these tools that are supposed to help are not biased and are inclusive. And finally, I would say when you look at the number and results, the answer is very clear. Women have a significant purchasing power when they have agency over the dollars in their households. And when you look at the results of how a woman spends money at the household level, when she has control over it, it tends to go across the world towards the education and health of their children and their household. So I hope that presents a clear reason why it's important, and happy to learn from others their perspective.
Most definitely. It gives a perfect overview. And even just looking back to history for sure, as the examples that you've given, there's no better way. Rather, I think there's no better way for someone to solve your problem if they're not experiencing it. So you're the best. Having that inclusivity also allows for that to happen. It makes the whatever is being developed, the innovation, to ideally suit the person that it's serving, and it makes the experience even better. I think Grace can expound on it.
I totally agree. I was getting excited as Rosita kept bringing up examples of how women, helped in making major leaps and making progress in terms of innovation and in terms of tech, and especially that point about how algorithms are generally less biased when there's a woman involved in the process of designing it. I think that's actually really, really cool. I didn't know that. I feel excited by that point. So you've really shown us why it is important for women to be part of innovation. But now I just want to find out what you think about, what are the best ways that we can use to encourage and, even support more women to get more involved in emerging tech, like blockchain and digital payments.
So my 3 quick answers, and I'll explain each one. One is start young. The second is say her name, show her picture. And the third is codify the business case. So first, starting young. And I fully support, thinking about just at the earliest age, even, the first few years of the child's life. A lot of research has been shown that certainly the first 3 years, but even the first 5 years are really critical to long-term educational development. And, planting the seed, planting the ideas early, and not just to girls. So I have 2 little boys, and at story time, I read them stories about women leaders from around the world, because I want them to know that women can be leaders, innovators, solutions, and change makers too. And so I would say start young, and not just with the girls, but to socialize the idea with both and all. The second, when I say her name and show her pictures, is that it's important to break the myths of what a blockchain expert looks like. What does a digital expert in a payment and digital payments look like? So put up the billboards, In the case of the United States, we actually recently created a quarter. So one of our coins has a woman on it. It's a poet that some of you might have heard of, Maya Angelou. And soon on one of our bills, our $20 bill, we will have another heroine for justice and rights. Harriet Tubman will be on that. Let's put up pictures. Let's share the stories and say their names. And on that one, I was going to share, really one of the most inspiring things that I've seen since I've been at PayPal was an award that PayPal created called the Maggie Lena Walker Award. And this was the first Black woman in the United States that chartered and owned a bank. And she had a number of other contributions to society. But we created an award in her name to both raise awareness of the contributions she made, but also to inspire and acknowledge others who are living her legacy. And finally, this is my bias and my MBA bias coming through in terms of codify the business case of what happens when women have these opportunities in terms of showing the possibilities and their impact, and then also highlighting the risks when you don't.
I think that's really, really cool. I really, really loved your first point. Start young, and even with the boys. Sometimes I think someone might feel like, yes, they're not putting women down, but it's also wrong if you're not doing anything about it. So are you also uplifting the women around you? Are you speaking up for them if you have the chance to? Are you showing up for them? Are you, are you just basically doing something about it, as opposed to just sitting there and saying, as long as I'm not putting them down in any way, then things are cool. So I really, really loved that point. I think also there's a bit about investments and opportunities. So there's still a huge gender gap in this regard. Maybe you can speak towards it. How can we bridge that gap between between investments and opportunities
Absolutely. So I think, three ideas here. One is transparency and reporting. The second is impact measurement. And the third is women in leadership and decision-making. So I think even just starting with the transparency and reporting, publish the statistics. How many women are in parliament? How many women own businesses? How many women are in senior leadership positions? Just creating transparency and putting light through reporting can go a long way to just identify there's some serious gaps here. The second is kind of linking that data to impact. And that's why it's so important to have impact measurement of whatever you're working on, to be able to show that there actually is a difference when in the, for example, performance of a loan or outcomes of a project when there's more women involved. And I think the third is quite simple and practical. And I think in the opening video of this series talked about what happens when women are at the table and at the head of that table in terms of having decision-making and leadership, and that the results are different. Whether it's in government, there's going to be less war. I mean, there's a lot of research that supports this. And we're seeing as the world increases in terms of women in leadership, the approaches are different, the solutions are different, and certainly the results are. And I think, there's a publication that the World Bank has called the Women, Business, and Law Report, which looks at across 190 countries in terms of what are the barriers for women in business. And I think that resource helps illuminate the structural barriers. In some cases, there are laws or policies that keep women from achieving their potential. And in other cases, there's kind of informal laws. And that's when I mentioned earlier about social and cultural norms. And so I think that's where it's on all of us to think it's not just about money. It's not about financial capital, but we have to think about the human capital of these programs that are targeted at women and girls to give them new skills, about reputation capital, of helping to raise awareness, say the name of these women who have achieved, show them that it's possible, and to inspire and bust these myths. Around intellectual capital, mentoring to help realize the opportunities that might exist and for women to pursue other industries versus in traditional industries that women might pursue. And then finally, around network capital, helping with using the network to help women get the resources they need, and when they have a product service, getting that product or service to market.
That's really like brilliant. Transparency, especially recording and reporting, very important for everyone to be aware of the situation that is, for them to also act on it, because at times I guess we are just working without data, and with it you're much more, empowered. You actually know where to step up, even as an organization. What can you do to put more women there? What can you do as a venture fund to create those opportunities? So it's really exciting. I think for us as Impact Africa Network, this has always been at the core of what we do. Thinking about how for our startups, we believe that women are, they have these abilities that really they make that startups thrive. They have, like, for all us, for our first startup, which I mentioned earlier, Jenga School, having a lady as our first, Wendy Oluoch, as our first CEO, that was quite a milestone for us. We've put her face everywhere, literally. It's what we talk about all year through. It's quite exciting. And even for our projects that are still coming up, it's something that we're still striving to do, because we've seen the results, we've seen the numbers, we've seen the effort that she puts in to make sure that the school is running quite smoothly. I think I'll have just one more question before we allow the audience to also send in their questions. What should companies do to support the youth and women, especially in entrepreneurship back in Africa? I'm sure already PayPal has plans for supporting women. So are there any other ways that you think of that can help young women and youth to be supported in entrepreneurship back in Africa?
Yeah, I think, when I think about some of the challenges of what everyone has a good idea, right? I think,
yeah.
But what's missing is all that's needed to take that idea to action. And so I think, there's a huge role for accelerators and incubators. And those accelerators and incubators don't have to be in the form of formal organizations, but they could be at the village or community level. It could be in schools. It could be from a church. It could be, all different different types of communities can help kind of incubate and support kind of the rapid testing or trying things out, or even just creating that encouraging, enabling environment. And PayPal, supports a number of different efforts that help to do that, because I think we all know that all lives have equal value and have the potential, but not all lives have equal opportunity. And so I think at the highest level, thinking about how can you level the playing field so that all of those ideas have a chance. And in the case of Africa, PayPal's very fortunate and has had an opportunity to contribute. We have a product called Zoom, and that's Zoom with an X. That's our remittance product that some of you might be familiar with. And, we just, through that, one of the ways we've had impact is just reducing the cost of transactions. Sometimes almost as high as 10%, was 9.3% in terms of the send of cost of money of transfers. But then we also have a partnership that we're really proud of with M-Pesa, which we've done in order to help contribute to that transformational power of mobile payments, so that consumers don't have to worry about to which account they're moving money, but that there's interoperability, and that the money can move as frictionless and as efficiently as possible. So I think, thinking creatively about who can be a part of the solution and thinking about what is needed in that ecosystem so that all of those great ideas have a chance to succeed.
Great. Amazing points there, Rosita. Time check. I can see we're already 45 minutes in. So I'll allow the audience, if you have any questions for Rosita, share them on the chat. We'll have some more time for her to give you feedback on them. We'll have a video playing of one of our innovation fellows as we wait on your questions.
First and foremost, just being a woman at IAN is an empowering thing. When I was coming in, there wasn't that feeling that I am disadvantaged by being a woman in this particular place, and that first and foremost is a good thing. But then also I've watched even the men at IAN rally behind the Power to Our Women initiative that is designed to inspire the next generation of female leaders, and that in itself is just mind-blowingly inspiring, I'd say. And so I feel like the women are at the heart of IAN. We are just as equally trusted with projects as the men are, and I love it.
Amazing. So we are back from our commercial break. So far, there are no questions coming in from the audience. So maybe we can just get into a bit more conversation with you, Rosita. So as a leader, I'm sure you have to keep yourself relevant, keep yourself growing. So what do you do to be that, to keep upskilling? How do you handle that?
So I really believe in the power of feedback and treating feedback as a gift. And so, really developing that habit of when you do something, when you make a decision, thinking about how can I learn from it? How could I have done it differently? How would someone else have done it? So I would say, that's first and foremost, and definitely a practice that I have of, treating feedback as a gift and an opportunity to learn. I think a second thing is, identify your benches and your sources, whether it's people you follow on Twitter, people you follow on LinkedIn, a set of authors or researchers that you follow. And what's great is we have all these tools that make it efficient for us to see what the latest study is or the latest thinking is on something. But be really careful about who you choose as your sources, and make sure they're diverse, and make sure there may be people that you disagree with, so that you're looking at the alternative point of view. And that's one thing that our tools do not help us. Twitter, LinkedIn, they generally tell us to follow people that are like us and that are similar to us and think similarly. So watch out for that. But really curate that list. I refer to it as a bench to my team that, whatever topic you're working on, like climate equity or economic empowerment, who are the experts, and make sure that there's diversity among those sources, that there are people from the global north as well as the global south, and then that there's also a mix of differing opinion. And I think the third kind of approach in, kind of being a good learner is just humility, and that just acknowledging and owning that there are things that you don't know and things you don't even know that you don't know, and that there's ever evolving new innovation and things that you have to learn about. And so just going into it with that posture of humility that there's so much to learn that you'll never be done. And just making sure that it's a habit, just as we exercise and sleep and eat, that learning has to be a part of our rhythm of business and the rhythm of our day, would be my 3 suggestions.
Really, really interesting. So I get the sense that you are a very well-read woman. So I'm curious to know, what is one book that you really started reading and couldn't get over it, and maybe it changed your perspective concerning something? What's that one book that really hit you? Yeah.
There's so many. Can I pick 2?
Yeah, you can even do 3 if it's hard to make the cut.
Harriet Tubman wrote a book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, and it's about slavery in the United States. And every time I read that story, it's like I'm reading it for the first time. I learn from it, I'm inspired by it, and it really physically moves me. And so I choose that book because I think the power of a story, can inspire you, can educate you. But in the case of that book, it really kind of moved me towards action. So that is kind of a story that I go to. Another is a book called The Power of One. And it's based off of a story in South Africa about a boxer during apartheid. And so it's dealing with a lot of the stories and challenges in society at the time. There's also kind of a love story mixed in there. There's also a movie about this book. So if you don't have time, it's kind of a long book. But that one similarly, I think, does a really great job about thinking about all the different forces that contribute to a circumstance, that helps you kind of unpeel like an onion all the different layers when you come to think about problem solving. And a more recent book that I read, I would point out, is Invisible Women. And this is a book that really talks about the power of gender data and why it's important to disaggregate data, not just for gender equality, but thinking about disaggregating data by race, by income, different types of segmentation. In that once you use data, gather data in a different way, it presents to you a very different and much more colorful and accurate sense of reality. And so it kind of shows the potential data. So those would be the three that I would offer.
That's really cool. Out of those books, I've read Uncle Tom's Cabin. I read it when I was a little girl. It's a very, very moving book, I'd say. So there's a question that just came in from the audience, and it's speaking to your younger self. What advice would you give yourself at the start of your career?
What advice? So I would, just to be more patient and merciful to myself. And that I think certain things take time, and realizing that, just to be patient and to take things one step at a time.
Awesome. Rosita, I can see that our time is running out on us. You've really given us some really inspiring gems. Really love your approach to learning, especially how you're talking about feedback, how you've spoken about inclusivity, and how both parties have to play about it, the organizations and the structures that could be able to support that kind of just enabling all genders to be represented. We've really enjoyed having you on the show today. I'm sure our audience have really taken a lot from it. I think we're just going to wind up. The show has been brought to you by Impact Africa Network, and having Rosita here, truly a pleasure for you making time. We truly honor it. Maybe I'll just give you a minute to just give a parting shot to the audience, how you felt about it. Yeah.
It's been a very energizing conversation. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure, and I'm sure will be the highlight of my year. I would just encourage all of you to just believe in yourselves and to know your worth. You have so much to give, not just to Africa, but to the world. And just don't hold back. And share your ideas, invite others to help you realize those ideas, but just know how powerful each of you are and how much potential all you have, and just unleash it.
Okay, amazing. So that was it for us for the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. It's brought to you by Impact Africa Network, nonprofit startup studio that is committed to changing the African narrative, and we firmly believe that women are critical in this mission. We are committed to providing women leadership opportunities in the startups that we develop. So to support our work, you can join our micro donations program for as little as $30 a month and be part of this exciting movement working towards creating a new African future. Thank you so much.